Today I'm going to discuss about how to install Active Directory in Windows Server 2012. So we have open Server Manager so far. We have configure Server Manager. We have checked the Server Manager, the new way where we can basically access the entire forest and configure the forest, as we have learned the reason behind the new UI of Windows Server 2012 and the concept behind the Windows Server 2012, the reason of its development and its build. So we can learn more about it by going to what's new in Server Manager. You can check it out. These points we have already covered. These points while checking the introduction of Windows Server 2012, also the introduction from Server Manager. So you can see the real problems and the solutions available. You can also go through the help section available on the Server Manager, since it's a centralized location where you can access or where you can configure the entire forest through Server Manager. And that's why you need not to go and configure, you need not to worry about wherever you wish to, you can configure. So you go ahead with the tools part, you go ahead with the local server. All local server, we have already configured that. In the tools bar, you will see how many the roles and the features are available. Let's begin with the installation part of our, and when we go ahead with the installation, we actually need to start remove rows or feature wizard. So when you click on it, about installation part, once you wish to move and once you go ahead with the installation or removal part of rows or feature, you can see the definitions are there about what administrator can do before the upgrading part or before the migrating part. You can see the administrator account has a strong password, network settings. You have to configure the static IP and all that. We just go ahead with that. That's a basic introduction, and you have two options. Once again, let's see the two option. It's role based, feature based installation, or you can go ahead with the remote desktop service installation. So either you install a role in a server, in a standalone server, install a role, install a feature you wish to add in this particular server, or you can go ahead and install the server or install the roles feature from the remote desktop. So it is required in virtual desktop and infrastructure to create a virtual machine based or session based desktop deployment. So it will not be a live installation, but it will be a session based desktop deployment or virtual based machine based installation. So we continue with this installation part, because we're going to install the server or rows in this particular server. You again have the option, either select the server from the server pool or select a virtual hard disk. So what is the destination server? Either you wish to add a role in this particular server itself, or you have two options, either install it in this particular server or a pool, or installed via virtual hard disk. We are selecting the same as we're going to install the server in this particular server, install the row. Now we're going to add Active Directory domain services, and when you add the Active Directory domain services, a couple of features will be automatically installed. Simultaneously, I'm going to add the DHCP server as well. DNS server will be a part of this Active Directory domain services installation, so you have to add that as well. And the the server I'm adding as out of this course is DHCP server, because DNS and Active Directory domain services both a part of the environment and have to be with each other. Either you promote the DNS server as primary, as additional domain, and anything for a loopback one, but you have to install it with the ADDS. I'm adding the DHCP server in extra, and the features by default I have taken the features, the requirements of the features which will be a part of it, the upgrading part of ADDS and the DNS. So I'm not going to add anything differently. You can see Active Directory domain services, and the entire definition will be there. What administrator could do, things to note, what are the things you need to do, or you could do with the installation part. You can read the entire things which is required, and if you have anything to note down, you can go through before you actually promote the Windows Server 2012 to Active Directory domain services. One thing I'm also wants to add is that like last previous operating systems, the legacy ones, you used to write a command called dc promo to install Active Directory. Now you can see once I write a dc promo, once I want to promote Active Directory via the command, you can see the error message came and say that ADDS installation wizard is relocated in a server manager. For more information, you can check at the link. The link is saying that via server manager itself, you can now promote Active Directory domain services in Windows Server 2012. So like in the previous versions, we used to promote ADDS via DC promo command, which is now no more applicable, and that is why we can go through this process. We are promoting Active Directory domain services via server manager. Now you can see DHCP server. Since I'm adding DHCP server, that's why the definition of DHCP server is also added. Before you go ahead with the installation part, you need to check it out, the things to note column where the couple of points are basically mentioned over there. So any administrator of Active Directory domain services should know about the installation part, and you can go ahead with the installation wizard, or what are the requirements of installation is, and according to it you can go ahead with promotion of ADDS along with the DHCP server. So since I'm installing ADDS along with the DHCP, and that is why the two things I'm adding here, one is ADDS with DNS and another one is installation of the DHCP. Now you can see the confirmation of installation selection. The thing which we're going to add is that these are the rows which we're going to install along with the features. We also require and if you wish to export the configuration settings, you can go ahead, like in the previous legacy versions as well, this feature were available. So I'm going ahead with this installation part. You can anytime restart this installation. Once the installation done, you can restart those, and for example, if you wish to pause the installation part without shutting down the system. So it will take a fair bit of time to install, and now features are installing. Currently I'm pausing my video. Once it gets installed, we'll be back for soon. Okay, we are back, and you can see the deployment configuration is going on, and the installation part is done. We have installed the feature and the roles along with DHCP server. Now you can see that it's kind of a refresh is going on. So, as I mentioned, that you need not to restart the entire system, because you can restart the server manager itself. Once you give a command on, if it's required, it will ask you to do so. Otherwise, we will proceed with. So the installation part is done. Now you can see it would now ask to give you some extra configuration it will require. Like you have to select the functional label, the forest functional label. Remember one thing, as we have discussed, that the legacy ones have to be in the latest functional label. That the latest operating system cannot work in the legacy functional label, so have to be in the latest functional label, which is Windows Server 2012 R2. Same with the domain first functional label, which is Windows Server 2012 R2. I'm now going to add a password for Active Directory domain services. Going to configure the same password, adding with the next. You can now say the specify DNS delegation option. You can see an error, a kind of a note is mentioning over there. A delegate for the DNS server cannot be created because the authority parent zone cannot be found or does not run Windows DNS server. So if you are integrating the existing DNS infrastructure, you should manually create a delegation to DNS server. But since the DNS is not available currently, we are just creating a DNS refresh the entire forest we are setting up. So that's why we can go with the DNS server installation path. The additional options where you need to add an NetBIOS domain name. So I'm just continuing with the same NetBIOS domain, which is Tech Engineer. Keeping it the same. Going with the next. Now it asks to select the path. So the location of ADDS database will remain the same, like it used to be before when you have promoted Active Directory domain services in the legacy systems. You have saw the same settings over there as well. So we are basically going through the same steps and we are following it as well, so you need not to worry about. We're just going with this next. And now you can see the review option. You still have time to check the entire additional configuration you have made after the installation part. You can view script, and you can see the installation options. You can check more options related to installation, so you can select through it. Going with the yes, and it will take you can see it will see the prerequisite checks, and then it will finally install the entire system with the Active Directory domain services, DHCP, and related to the feature. So it will take a fair bit of time to promote. Currently I'm pausing my video. We'll be back once the installation part will be done. Okay, you can see that all prerequisites checked has been passed successfully. Click install to begin installation. So no error has been found, and you can now go ahead with the installation part. I'm clicking on install, and now the final step for the installation part begins. So I'm once again pausing my video. We'll be back once the installation gets done. Okay, you can see the installation part has been done, and now it asks you to sign out. So the reason it asked me to sign out immediately because I didn't check that option of installation. So it now restart my system will be back once the restart part will be done. Okay, so the restart part has been done, and we'll have to give a password, have to log in to the system back. So if for example that step because we have skipped that part to explain, because if we for example install the system and we check that restart part, so it will actually pause the system to get a restart. Otherwise, once you install something around Active Directory and something around DHCP or DNS, it immediately restart the system. So basically, if you are in the 24/7 environment of cloud, and if your users are, and if you want the downtime to be addressed to each and every user of Creative Cloud, you need to first mention to the user particularly that the particular time will see a downtime. So you need to address those before you begin installation. So server manager will now open, and we can see it will try restarting, try to check the details, and it will start configuring itself. And if any requisite, if it requires something to be done post installation, it will ask you to do so. So hope you learned something about installation of ADDS.